Hi, this is Vitas Kasilios, the CEO of CMC, and welcome to our next edition of the CMC Solves webinar series, where today we're going to talk about next generation complaint handling and how we turn negatives into positives. I want to say good morning to all the folks from the East Coast in the U.S., and to those of you calling in from London, good afternoon. So in our CMC webinar series, those of you who have listened before know the series is a monthly compilation of industry trends and activities. So today we're talking about complaints, the regulatory help that we're getting, and whether we can turn that potential nuisance into an opportunity and capitalize on it with respect to the regulators. But before we get to that, I just want to remind you that we want all of your comments and suggestions either at the end of this webinar as you fill out the post-webinar survey, or send us an email to the address listed on the screen. We're very interested in getting your feedback and figuring out how to make this series more topical and relevant for you. So let's start with the obvious question. Why bother changing anything? We've had complaint handling in the past using fairly semi-manual processes, and they've worked okay. And even to the point of what good possibly could come out of making ourselves more available to our customers, as this cartoon depicted complaints manager has found out. But the truth is you can make good come out of these complaints by both increasing your customer retention and therefore revenue, but also come up with some good ideas for making operational efficiencies that will reduce cost. And bottom line, we're all talking about it today because we're looking to avoid regulatory risk. Because guess who's now very interested in complaints? It has always been the case that our regulators are interested, but now, and particularly here in the U.S., the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and big focus on protection, are looking at complaints very carefully, as are the FCA, the FSB in the UK, and some of the other regulators around the world. So it's something that, in the case of the CFPB, has become a distinct area of focus, even to the point where the CFPB are compiling a database of people's complaints, and consumers are being kind of aggressively courted and urged to file their complaints. To date, they talk about 186,000 complaints received, 25,000 of which come through credit cards, and others come from other products and other parts of the industry. And they're touting some fairly interesting statistics about the number of people who get something for complaining. While the regulators are happy to say they only want to help, it's clearly the case that the consumeristas are saying that this is the best thing that happens in sliced bread. And if you look at one, the U.S. Public Interest Resources Group, they have a series of 5 reports, the 4th of which just came out in January, that are reviewing not only the kind of complaints that are coming in, but complaining about our complaints process and how we don't handle the complaints as expeditiously as they would like to see us do. But the general perception on the street is this complaint management regimen that the CFPB have foisted on the industry despite our objections, which you can tell by my tone I don't agree with, but they are also touting the perception that it's working. They're pointing to $800 million in enforcement actions to some specific creditors, and if you add up the number of different attorney general settlements and the settlements in the mortgage business, this is a really, really big deal in terms of what it's costing the industry. And these consumeristas are saying, you see, now that we're paying attention, we're really getting good results for our consumers. So I'll start our normal survey question by posing a poll, asking if you've noticed a change in your organization around the way that you're managing complaints. And would love to have you, click all that apply. You've significantly revamped the complaint management process, or you've made some changes to the complaint management, or you're just looking at it, or you're proceeding with business as usual and not making changes. So maybe keep the poll open for another 10 seconds. Interesting feedback, and I thank you for that. And it seems like we're sort of between B, C, and A, and almost no one is just proceeding business as usual, which is good. So is this a nuisance or is it an opportunity? There was a recent article in the American Banker saying customers are now our greatest regulatory threat, and that if we don't revamp our customer service operations to get these people to complain to us before they go to the government, we're just going to be turning our customers into our regulators. Now, we don't want to go to the other end of the spectrum, as this cartoon illustrates, where the guy says, you know, good news is I've 100% stopped complaints. The bad news is I also have 100% lost my customer base. So obviously I'm saying it could be an opportunity, but how? How is it that it could be an opportunity? And the answer is, to the extent that we can preempt these consumers' complaints to regulators by providing a very visible, transparent process and demonstrating a high degree of responsiveness and reporting very transparently, we can actually take the wind out of the sails of the consumeristas by solving the problems quickly, and more importantly, we can use this data to improve the customer's experience. So if we look at what's happening today in banks, we see manual processes where systems just capture the data, but the systems don't drive or guide the ongoing solution of the complaint. And as we get new data from the consumer, we're not making dynamic adjustments to our process. We also see in many banks that they might have an enterprise system, and they might have certain systems that are specific to a line of business or a product, and so the customer is experiencing different handling and different resolution time frames and documentation, notifications, and whatever, based on where they complained, even within an organization. And if the dispositions of how the complaints were handled aren't categorized consistently, categorized in a way that I can compare them across lines of business or at a customer level, that makes it very hard for my efforts to be coordinated and for me to make improvements. I've got all these subject matter experts in the various departments, but they don't in many cases even see the complaints. They don't get to put their input on how we could avoid the problem in the first place, and they often don't get to see enough of a spectrum of the complaints so they can get the bigger picture view of how what they're working on fits in. And these manual processes that aren't standardized and sometimes avoid the subject matter expert also means that they're prone to errors where complaints can just get lost in a black hole somewhere, where customers can have their complaint resolved and not have their that resolution communicated to them. So were we to be able to fill these gaps, obviously consistency of capture for measurement, but also for provability to the regulators would be key. In so doing, we'd be improving our customers' experience, and that would lead to opportunities for retention and opportunities to streamline operations. And obviously, to the point, if we could be more proactive and more transparent, we'll clearly reduce the amount of regulatory risk. So let's talk automation of complaints specifically. Has your bank recently deployed any new automation to capture and track complaints? And this says in-card operations, but if you're not a credit card person and your product line has deployed any new automation, go ahead and click yes on that. So leave this open another 10 seconds. Thank you for your quick responses. This is great. And it looks like about 70% of you have done something in terms of new automation, which is good. So what's the challenge here? It's clearly that big list to the right side of this slide, catching and coding all the complaints, getting them routed correctly, capturing what was done, and ensuring that resolution happens, having a way to escalate inactivity, having a way to notify customers, and then analyze the trends, identify root causes, and communicate the results. So if we break it down, capturing the relevant information, categorizing it consistently, whether the complaint's captured by someone in the branch, someone in the call center, someone at an agency, or someone at another department, another product, so that I can sort and store it into an addressable and understandable whole. And then once it's in that understandable whole cloth, I can assess the information to really figure out what actions and remediations happen per complaint, but also take action on that to solve the individual complaint as well as the mass of complaints at the trend or root cause level. And finally, if I've managed to do it right, I can just show the regulators everything I've done, and because it's all captured in a single system. So let me ask you about your complaint capture and tracking system on this 1 to 5 scale, where 1 is we capture the complaints and reports, but we file them in our own format, i.e. enterprise-wide, but not specific to my product or my area. A 3 would be we do collect the complaints, and we kind of have them in CFPB format, but my system still only captures completed actions. It doesn't proactively help me manage the process. And a 5 would be we have a completely automated complaint capture and tracking system that includes proactivity in terms of the alerting and the notification and the next action, so that I never have complaints lost in a black hole. And as I can understand here, we're trending toward the low 3 sort of level. So everybody collects their complaints and reports on them, but we're still falling shy of really using the system in an automated fashion. So that's a great lead into how can CMC help. We have a complaint capture and tracking solution that both captures the information about the complaint as well as allows the consumer's documentation about it to be captured, and metadata, as in when I'm trying to reach that consumer, what has happened with the attempts to reach them, and when they give me the document, I don't have to depend on my people to enter what happened in the document. I'll show you that in just a minute. We also have a workflow that guides the process and allows me to give visibility to multiple different departments and subject matter experts so they can move through to completion, and everything in the system is auditable. And it happens to use the same platform as our FlexCollect and FlexCollect recovery solutions, so our solution is compatible with that. What we provide is automation that ensures a single workflow management process, so all complaints are handled using that same process regardless of where or when a complaint originates, and a surefire way to keep any complaints from getting stuck in the process in the form of escalation queues and alerts to the appropriate people. And then anything that's disposition as a resolution, that drives notifications and is captured in your reports. We also have a self-service option so that consumers could enter their own complaints and upload supporting documentation and go see the status of their complaint without having to call someone in customer service to find out. So that would be very valuable. And we have a full suite of reporting. So it works like this. You know, we're basically trying to make sure that all of the complaints track up through various customers to through a centralized workflow run by CMC to your bank, so that you can both respond to each individual one and notify the customer of what was done, but also aggregate the experience for reporting. So the process would kind of flow like whether it's a customer or an agent who completes the complaint online, answers the specific questions about the complaint's nature and time and location, and uploads any supporting documentation. Then the appropriate department, based on the type of complaint, is engaged to work off of the queue of complaints that fall to them, add their dispositions, and then the system is going to route it to the next person until it's resolved. And once it's resolved, it'll be in the reporting that allows you to then monitor your progress against all the different complaints at various stages, and also capture the remediation so that you get a full trail of what happened, so that now for periodic audits you can go follow this process all the way through. So how do we specifically do that? Within the Credagility platform, you use the workflow manager to define how you want to route a complaint through various departments or processes, and you can also provide for a survey to capture data about the complaint as you go. Within that workflow, you can define documents that you either create to send notifications back to the customer, or for the facility to upload documents by the consumer into the workflow. You can make that complaint process managed online or with an agent. So this is an example of an online portal where the customer is asked to come in and select from a kind of a set of activities, open a new complaint, work on an existing complaint, fill in their details, fill in documentation that they would like, and upload it to this system saying, I've got this particular supporting document. No, I don't have any additional document. And when they're done, we thank them for submitting their complaint and tell them they're going to be sent written advice outlining the process. Now, as they're entering the document, either they or you, when you look at the document in your administrative area, can then add more information about the document. This is the metadata I was talking about, where you can write down what it is that that document says and have someone on your side confirm the inputs, whether you had the consumer put in the document and put in the metadata and you're just checking it, or whether your agent is putting in the metadata and validating what the document says. At that point, the administrator internally to your office can use the same credibility solution to look at all of the complaints and see what people's answers are, see what documents they're uploading, whatever, and then you can get a full report on what are the causes of complaints that are most frequent, where are they originating from in terms of who's being complained about, and you can build a dashboard that gives you a tracking of all the status of the various complaints. So as I look at what the big challenges were, the ability for it to be auditable and, more to the point, to be able to prove it and not try to prove a negative by saying, well, we don't have any problems, so that must be the proof, which the regulators are summarily rejecting, but rather say, we don't have any problems because we have this system in place that enforces the fact that there would not be any problems, or we could tell you any that were. And by providing that sort of middle ground between your bank, your customers and their complaints, and your regulators that you're reporting to, our credit agility platform offers you a great deal of facility and has some specific advantages. The workflow automation makes it easy to define processes and automate them. Using surveys with the ability to upload documents is a key feature. And the built-in omni-channel execution capability says you can send these notifications and alerts at any time in any kind of format, letter, email, text, IVR message, cue somebody to a dialer for them to get an agent call, whatever you want. And the ability of the system to generate real-time alerts when a particular complaint is moving from one stage to the next or not moving is a key feature, all of which is driven by our internal decision engine, and all of which then routes to our reporting engine, which allows you to then make your measurements at either a very high macro level or at an individual complaint micro level. And obviously, anytime I can write down a process and automate it, I can re-engineer it faster. So at the end of the day, by controlling all the complaint processes and changes, by empowering consumers and providing transparency, I can automate what today takes a bunch of people doing manual effort. And by automating the audit itself and the reporting, I can provide greater transparency. I can do some advanced root cause analysis and execution of remediations, which is what the regulators say they're after in the first place. And remember, I can do this internally for my own departments, but I can also, through Credit Agility, make the same thing available to my external DCAs and collections agencies. And at the end of the day, I can report on and I can prove everything I did so that you and the regulators can be confident that all the compliant policies and practices are in place, that you're capturing all the issues, and that you're identifying the root causes systemically. At the departmental level within your organization, you're leveraging the expertise of people that need to be engaged when it's relevant to their work, giving them full visibility to the entire flow of the complaint and the complaints in aggregate so that they can generate views on the system's flaws that you need to address in your operating systems. And you can also kind of make sure that the right person is handling the complaint at the right time in order for us to have the best bet of getting it resolved quickly and in the right way. So instead of complaint management being this thorn in the side, it could be and should be a shining example of compliance at the organizational level. So in summary, we derive lower expense through automation, but by engaging systemic business rules, we provide consistency and fairness. And I can do this equally whether I'm using an internal resource or an external third-party resource. And it's an easy to deploy, change, and demonstrate kind of a deal. So we had a client last year, who had a big concern about a regulatory upcoming visit. And it happened not to involve complaints specifically, but they were able to deploy our system very quickly and generate a zero findings audit in their recovery unit. And this same principle applies to those of you out there who are worried that you're going to get hammered on the complaints issue. We're a cloud-based solution, so it makes it fast, cheap, and easy to deploy, and the architecture is so flexible as to allow for quick modifications as your scenarios change. So with that, I'm going to turn to questions, and I see one that says, how does what you guys sell compare to my enterprise system? That's a great question. The simple fact is that we would be operating a workflow of your design that would be specific to the task at hand, whether it's mortgage or credit card or student loan or auto or whatever. And we would probably advise your playbook to make it compatible with CFPB, but we could also create an extract file that would go to your existing enterprise system so that you don't have to rekey it from one system over to another system and start over again. So hopefully that answers the question. And I see both that I don't have any more questions and that we are running out of time. So I'm going to just sign off by thanking you for joining us for this webinar. I look forward to speaking with you again in a month. And as always, if you have any questions or issues or suggestions or other thoughts about how we can make this more usable, we would love to hear from you. Thanks a lot for your time. Good day.